Hi, I'm Mark Peoples. I work for the CSIRO Agriculture Flagship based in Canberra, and for the last 3 or 4 years I've been involved with a project working with grower groups looking at the impact of including break crops in otherwise cereal dominated farming systems. We've been looking at the impact of legume and canola break crops on weed management, on soil water, disease, but because we're working with legumes, we're also interested in the impact the legumes have on the overall nitrogen dynamics of these systems. We've been largely looking at pulses that are grown for grain, but we have included some pasture legume species, but we've also been including legumes grown for brown manure. This is a strategy that's increasingly being used by grain growers in southern New South Wales, where there's been the development of herbicide-resistant ryegrass in particular. A legume crop will be sown and then sprayed out mid-season prior to the ryegrass setting seed, as a way of managing weed seed banks, trying to get weed numbers down, but at the same time generating an input of nitrogen. So there's been some useful, rules of thumb, rough rules of thumb that have started to emerge from this sort of work. If we compare the amount of soil mineral nitrogen or soil nitrate, we measure it to 1.60 meters, which is about the rooting zone of a wheat crop. If we look at the amount of soil nitrate prior to sowing wheat, following wheat or following a legume grown for grain or a legume that's been brown manured, we're starting to see increases in the amounts of soil nitrate in the order of about 30 to 40 kilos of mineral N after a legume grown for a pulse, and up to 90 kilos of mineral N following a brown manure. That's in the first wheat crop after the legumes. In the second wheat crop, those values are around about 20 kilos of additional mineral N following the legume grown for grain, or around 30 to 35 following the brown manure. So we've been looking at sort of what sort of relationships we might be able to develop that can put these into some sort of context. And those sorts of additional mineral nitrogen we've found represents approximately 0.1 to 0.2 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, additional soil nitrate being mineralised for every millimetre of rainfall that occurs during the fallow period between the legume crop and the following wheat crop. Another useful rule of thumb that's developed is that these additional soil nitrates are also equivalent to, say, between 7 kilos of nitrogen being mineralised per tonne of legume stubble, or closer to 11 kilos of nitrogen being mineralised per tonne of brown manure residues. Not many people can actually measure how much dry matter is in the residues, but in the case of a pulse crop, the harvest index, that is the amount of above ground dry matter that's harvested or removed in the grain, is roughly about a third, 30 to 35% of the above ground dry matter is grain. So if a farmer, for example, grows a 3-tonne lupin crop, there's probably about 6 tonnes of residues left behind, of which about 7 kilos of nitrogen are going to be mineralised per tonne. So the additional nitrogen you might expect after a lupin crop will be in the order of 40 kilos.